Hello and welcome back. This is episode 3 of my podcast series, Interviews with Educators, and my returning guest is Miss Megan Vosk. Megan is an international educator who has lived and taught in multiple countries around the world, and now in Vientiane, Laos, she's part of the Middle Years program and also serves in coordination roles that include turning the service learning practices into more community engagement practices. Megan cares deeply about how students experience belonging and how they have access to support in their learning environment and in the wider community. And hello, if you're new, I'm Christina Kottman. I'm an international educator myself and actually worked with Miss Megan in Delhi, India for a time. And now I work as a consultant supporting school leaders as they redesign their onboarding processes to support teacher retention and well-being. One of the reasons I started this podcast is to bring the stories of real educators with their lived insights and experiences to the internet so that educators and advocates for change in education have a window into what's already working, what schools are trying, and the expertise that educators carry. Welcome back, extraordinary international educator, Miss Megan Vosk. It's so lovely to talk to you again because this topic is all about community. And I love speaking about community and relationships and how we can be more connected to the place that we come from or the place that we're currently living in. So take us back to a moment where you saw a school really start to question what they were doing with community involvement.
I think there's just been so much more now like a shift towards like one-off acts of volunteerism to trying to have more thoughtful and reciprocal relationships with community partners. So I remember when we were in Delhi, I ran the Delhi out and about trip, and we took a trip to a Sikh soup kitchen and we helped serve food to people. But actually, I think stuff like that, maybe people really aren't doing stuff like that anymore so much, because when you do that, it's just kind of a one-off for a photo. Like, look at me helping the needy and I'm serving soup. But like, it's completely decontextualized and we had no idea where we were, or who the people were, or why were the Sikhs doing this, or where the people getting the food. You know, it was just more like opportunity to kind of be volunteers and take a photo. It just felt really wrong to me in a sense. I mean, I know that the reasons why we did it was good intentions and to give the students an opportunity to engage in service. And I'm sure that the people that got the meal, it's good to get a free meal, but also it could have been such a much richer experience if we had done research or talked to people beforehand or get a better understanding of what are the values of Sikhism and why do they serve food to people. There could have been so much more to it than what we did. And I remember I left that feeling kind of, I don't know, yucky maybe.
Yeah, it kind of feels performative, right? And not to say that any of those volunteer experiences have been, but it can start to feel like that. There was an example I was reading about where schools would go to a local orphanage and they'd paint the walls and make it all beautiful. And then 3 weeks later, a different school came and basically did the same thing.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I think there's a big push in education to make sure that we're helping students see that they can make a difference, right? We're giving them that agency, that space to say, I can change the world. And that often comes up as, let's go out into our community and help somebody. But that kind of comes with its own caution tape, right? You're saying that this person isn't empowered until you come in and help them.
Yeah, and oftentimes, the students don't realize how much power and privilege they have and how they actually have their own ideas about how things should be and what they can do. Or students often want to fundraise. You have a bake sale and we can raise money for some cause, be helpful, or we can just give money to X organization or Y organization, but they haven't really done their research or been thoughtful about, what are they doing and why. Sometimes kids are just kind of in a hurry to do something, or they feel like they have to do something for their CAS requirement or for school, or they want to help because they have a genuine desire, but they're just not quite sure how.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the patience that we can cultivate in our school structure, because like you said, the IB has capstone projects and service learning components that are very important in helping students become the global citizens that we want them to be. But oftentimes you have these constraints and we don't have time to do the background research. We don't have time to really understand if this is going to be the most supportive venture with this community. We're going to do it so we can check a box.
Yeah, there's an example from my school where there was flooding last year, and so there was a clothing drive, and people donated like so much clothing, toys, warm stuff. And then at the start of this year, the woman that organized the drive came and said, actually, none of that clothing ever got sent. We didn't organize it. So can you help me? We need to actually organize it. But it was like a year after the drive, and there was just boxes and boxes and boxes of clothes that had been sitting in some closet somewhere that hadn't even gone out because it had been collected, and then there was no follow through or plan of what to do with it. And it takes time.
Goes to a larger conversation about charitable acts, right? And philanthropy. We could have this wonderful idea of, I'm going to bring winter jackets to the people in this community, or I'm going to deliver a bunch of canned food to the food pantry nearby. And perhaps if you spoke to them, if you had more conversations about what the actual needs were, you would realize they don't actually need that. They need socks. Socks are a bigger need than the winter jackets. Or perhaps people are not consuming as much canned food because of the high sodium levels. Instead, what would be more beneficial would be to have like gift cards so that they can go to the local produce market. But it's not ever one solution. And I think that's where we get kind of caught up in this feeling of, I want to do something good and generous, but it has to be my idea. Otherwise, I don't own it.
And actually, the better thing is to look for the root causes of the problem. Like, what are the causes of food insecurity, or what are the causes of people not being able to buy their own food? Rather than donating the cans to the food bank, it might be better to talk to the local baker and see how much baked goods are getting thrown away every day, and could some of that food waste be repurposed or given away to the food bank? Or we talked earlier about gardens, right? So is there a space for a community garden so that people can maybe grow their own food and have their own fresh food instead of having to rely on canned donations or things that are maybe a bit more creative solutions other than the more traditional ones? But the more traditional ones also, there's lots of people that rely on the donations from the food bank too. But are there partnerships that could be done with like local businesses or local restaurants or other community organizations? I remember when I was working in Oregon, we had a partnership with the local farmers market, and the students would run one of the booths. There were students that qualified for food stamps, and they would run one of the booths in the local farmers market. And then at the end of the day, they got to take home any of the leftover produce and fruits and vegetables that hadn't been sold. Win for everyone, and a little bit more of a creative solution that actually kind of addressed more of the root cause of the problem.
Exactly. I think it's also, as we're talking about service learning, there's a big shift towards understanding that it's not one and done. Anything that has root causes that consistently show up in our society, it's a problem that has many layers to it, right? It's multifaceted. I think when we talk about food insecurity, there are many reasons why someone might find themselves in that situation. It's not just one thing. And often when we come up with creative solutions, we kind of house it in that it's a solution. It solves the problem. Whereas really we should be framing it as, this is a support that's going to give someone more access and more agency in their life.
Yeah, and also I think we're trying to change broken systems. So we think about everything are kind of interconnected systems. When we look at what are the root causes of issues or problems within a system, how can we make changes that kind of improve the system or make the system work in a different way, or that maybe can change a little bit what's going on in the system to have more positive outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it makes me think about community partnerships particularly, because as you said, if we don't have this relationship with people in our community, we have no idea what the actual struggles, the root causes of the issues are. So we're just speculating.
Yeah, and in my school, my role is called community engagement coordinator. So in addition to teaching, I also have this role of community engagement or coordinator, and I've been trying to build some partnerships, for example, with local NGOs or with local schools, but more than just a one-off. So this is a partner that we work with multiple times over the course of the year, that we come back to every year. And so we start to know kind of who are the other people there, and we kind of are meeting more frequently or communicating more frequently about what we can do to kind of work together or fill some needs in the community. And thinking of the local school that we've worked with for several years, and the first year when we worked with them, they told us that they had need for a water tank because they didn't have access to clean water, and that their water tank had broken. And then the second year, they told us that they needed projectors so that they could give students access to content that wasn't just in the book. And so they could screencast from their phone to the projector. And it's only through these long conversations that we were identifying what do they need, and then we could think more creatively about, okay, how can we provide that, or what can we do to kind of secure the funding for that. But really thinking and listening, because when you go to the local school, you see maybe doesn't have any windows, or the desks are kind of, in very old or broken, or there's just a blackboard. You might think when you go there, oh, I need to make aesthetic changes, like I need to paint or I need to replace the furniture. Actually, they wanted a water tank and projectors. It's totally different than what you would assume.
Exactly. I think there's also this feeling that student learning has to be that really hands-on, experimental, experiential, moment where they say, I made this, I changed this. And actually, really substantial change happens through relationships and conversations that cannot really be photographed.
Yeah, we want to do something right away that has a clear and tangible, this is what I did, right? Or we take the students on the service trip for a couple hours and it's very tangible. You can see what we made. But you're right, it does take time. And it takes a lot of effort getting to know someone, getting to learn more about them. And sometimes it's not even there's a product that you want to produce. Sometimes community engagement is about just talking with someone or having a guest speaker come in, or going and visiting somewhere that you haven't been before, or within your own school, partnering up students of different age groups that don't normally interact, or bringing parents in, or I'm trying to think more about I shared with you the example earlier about getting to know the cooks a little bit better, or the gardeners in school a little bit better. So really thinking more about the community outside the classroom in a broader sense, not just the students and the teachers.
Yeah. I'm thinking that families could also have a wonderful opportunity to bring in more ideas from their culture, more experiences that they've had with community involvement projects, because they're not in the school building all day long. And as educators, we can have a lot of assumptions about what's happening out there, or even if a student is struggling with XYZ, I wonder what their family is experiencing. And rather than creating assumptions about what the student needs and we have to solve a problem, there's a different shift in our thinking about what do you see? What would be most helpful for you? Is it a projector? Is it a mural?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually we have a cool event at our school called the Changemakers Summit, and we have some parents come in and lead small group sessions with students about their work and what they've done to help improve conditions in the community. So sometimes the parents come in and they're experts and they share their knowledge.
Yeah, and that even creates more of a sense that knowledge is all around us. There's lifelong experiences that you're going to be able to have outside of school, because school doesn't also want to create this feeling that you can only do acts of service when it's designed by a classroom teacher, or it's validated by the school, or it's going on your college resume so you can get into the place that you applied to.
Yeah, and my school also, we have student-led clubs, and there's a couple really cool student-led clubs that students are doing. There's one group of students that's working with a group that works on a cleft palate removal here in Lao. And so the students of their own accord became passionate about this issue and were able to connect with the NGO. And they've been working for the past 2 years now on helping to support the NGO and support when they come and they do the cleft palate surgeries. That's a really cool example. And then there's another student-led club that was working with Organization for People with Disabilities, and they were putting on a special arts festival. And so the students worked to, help with the marketing for the arts festival. We provided a media team. Some students performed at the arts festival. And so that was also a student-led club that was really cool.
I mean, that brings up the idea that we also don't know what the accessibility needs are for someone in our community. I was listening into a webinar where we're talking about student support services and how we design, just like language policies, how we design the services that support learners with all different needs and different levels of needs, and supporting schools and being able to bring those learners into their communities. And, it's more than just setting up wheelchair accessibility ramps and elevators. It's also about what do we think about this person's experience? How are we going to frame the communications around the changes that we are doing to our campus, but also that we're doing to the way that we handle if there's a moment where we need to have a separation from the main class? How do we present that to our community, to our learners, to the educators as well? Because everyone's coming in with their own bias.
Yeah, and I think now people are becoming much more aware of those types of issues and are talking more openly about that. like at our school, when we have assemblies, we always have a separate room where students can go if they need like a quieter space, and they can watch on a live stream. So they don't have to be in the big assembly with all of the students where it's really noisy. And like when we had our International Day parade, like we had that special room where some students could go, and so they could still be a part of the event, but it was just much less stimulating and a little bit quieter and a little bit more safe for them. So really trying to think, like you said, about where do people feel comfortable and how. Or like when we invited the special guest in to share with us about his organization for people with disabilities, like because he has a vision impairment, we thought really carefully about, okay, where should we put the desks in the classroom? Like who will pick up the speaker? How will we make sure that the speaker gets to the classroom okay? Like, and students made sure, like, for example, we only send this person voice notes so that they don't have to have the text read aloud to them, but we've already provided the voice notes. So really thinking about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about a teacher who might feel like they are already in the same environment that they grew up in. It's the same community that they've known their whole life. And what advice we might be able to provide about how to extend the learning that's happening in the classroom, particularly those leadership skills, those collaborative skills about what don't I know from my own community. How can we help someone kind of shake off that feeling of, I know these people, I know this community, I know what they need, and actually build in some understanding that maybe there's something that you are too close to even see.
Well, that's amazing though, because then you already have like a large number of contacts that you can reach out to when you want to do different kinds of events. So like, or when you want to do community engagement, like maybe you have friends that are artists or friends that are working in media fields or friends that are working in healthcare or different kinds of organizations that are like kind of removed from education, and you can kind of leverage those to give students a different experience or, learn about a new context, or maybe like something interesting will happen. Like if you invite one of your friends to classroom and talk about their business or organization. So it's actually, I think, easier when you know people in your community, because you don't have to, sometimes I have to do like cold calling. It's like I'm looking up like, what are like organizations in Laos that deal with sustainability, and then I'm just like kind of sending people messages on their Facebook page, and seeing like, are they interested in partnership, or can we develop something? But if you already have all the contacts and you know your community and you know all of the businesses there and a lot of the people there, then I think it's a real strength, because you already have the partnership. And it takes so long to build a community partnership. Like I've been doing it for 4 years, and now I feel like I'm finally starting to see like some roots being put down, like some lasting things that are becoming embedded like in the culture of the school. It takes a long time to develop trust between people.
It's a trust, communication, relationship. Like you're not just asking to come in and solve one problem. You're asking to be partners.
Yeah, and I love at our school we have this this committee called VIS Cares, and it's like a grant. It's a grant giving body, and like so the money that the like Parents and Friends Association raises from different events, like like the carnival or something, they use that money to kind of fund different community engagement projects. And it's the students that come and ask for the grants. So because they have an idea of like an organization they want to support, or a partner they're working with, or an idea for a project, and so they come in and like share a proposal and give a presentation, and they can ask for up to $500. But what we found is that the students that have been at the school the longest usually are the ones that come first, because they know, like we had a group that came a couple of weeks ago, and they were working with the local school for the deaf, and they said these kids need a playground, and they'd done a lot of partner work and play experiences with that school, and they said, oh, these kids have no playground equipment, and so they wanted $500 to build some slides and a swing. So they'd really talk to the kids, and they knew, and this is what they'd asked for. So you're right, sometimes students have the best ideas, so sometimes it's best for the adults just to kind of like give the money and then get out of the way, right? And then you can see like what the students are capable of.
Yeah.
We just want to provide opportunities for students to become leaders, and for students to see themselves as kind of part of the larger community and part of a larger something, because oftentimes we get really isolated within like the physical walls of the international school community. It's very bubbly, and there are quite large walls that surrounding the school, and probably surrounding most international schools. It's like, kind of very shut off from the outside community. But having the opportunity to connect with people that are outside the walls, I think it can be very meaningful for everyone involved. And helps, students in a transient community to feel maybe a little bit more rooted. And same for teachers and families. They start to feel kind of more like they belong somewhere and that they do have a place, even if they're not going to be there for so long.
I mean, part of the work I'm doing right now is helping schools with their onboarding process. And that feeling of belonging within the first couple weeks, like that is so crucial. And it's like you can go back and forth between your home and your school via van or, walking to school. But are you actually integrating into the community that you're living in? Do you feel connected to this beautiful culture that if you're an international teacher, you intentionally moved to this beautiful place?
Someone just told me about a school that their orientation week, they just do service projects or community engagement projects. So like they choose which project they want to be a part of, and every day for a week, like everyone goes and does the community engagement project. I heard so like beautiful. One example was like mangrove restoration, and like all of the people are out in the mangrove forest, like planting seeds and working to like ensure the health of the forest, so really interesting kinds of things schools are doing now to kind of promote community engagement and that sense of belonging.
Yeah. And that sets us up really well to talk about the next chapter of this podcast, which is what can teachers actually do? I think as we get into that conversation, we're going to talk a lot about how a lot of these things are policies, a lot of it's structural, a lot of it's decided for you, but you have an interesting role as a community leader in schools. And I think that's very discussion worthy.
Well, thank you, Christina. That's really kind of you.
So that's what we're going to leave you on with this episode about community engagement. And we'd love to hear any ideas that you have for engagement projects in your local community through a local school that you're part of or you're connected to perhaps as a parent or as an advocate. And Megan and I will see you at episode 4, where we're going to talk all about classroom leadership and what teachers can do to actually shape the school culture. So we'll see you there.
I'm looking forward to it.